You already know the time. NFL with AJL, episode 76. We're live on a Tuesday. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here tapped in with me on the show. Y'all make sure to get in the comments if the music might be too loud. I'm working with a new studio tonight, trying to make it a little smoother for the graphics and everything for y'all. But I hope y'all have had a fantastic last couple of weeks. I know we've been gone for a little bit. We got plenty of college football and NFL content as well. If you guys, for some reason, did get in the path of Hurricane Milton, Hurricane Debbie, that was the one before. The other hurricane that came through Florida, especially Tennessee and Western North Carolina, praying for you guys big time. I know a lot of people were affected by that. Of course, before we get into everything, y'all please make sure to like and share the stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell so you never miss a post that we put out on YouTube. Of course, that QR code in the corner of the screen is every bit of social media and podcast content for the show. If you can't find me, you're simply not looking hard enough. Make sure you get at us on Facebook, YouTube, and the Twitch channel as well. Like I said, we got a packed show tonight, guys, as Davante Adams was traded to the Jets. The Washington Commanders feel like they're heating up. Alabama escapes South Carolina. Oregon and Ohio State play a game of the year in that Big Ten thriller, and much, much more. Like I said, I want to see you guys get down in the chat and in the comments. Appreciate everybody jumping into the show tonight. And let's go ahead and get right into it. As like I mentioned, Alabama escapes South Carolina 27-25. And we've now seen back-to-back weeks from the Alabama Crimson Tide where they look vulnerable. And really for the last 2.5 games, we saw the second half against Georgia. We know that Vanderbilt put 40 up on them in Vanderbilt, the first time that team has ever beat a number one ranked team. And now they are struggling with the South Carolina Gamecocks. And this is crazy to watch Alabama go through. You're in Tuscaloosa. It feels like this is a get right game. But when you're in the SEC and when you feel like you're in these trap games when your team might be kind of reeling, there isn't necessarily a free game in the SEC. And if you're a fan of college football, you know exactly what I mean by that. So on a scale of 1 to 10, really, what is the panic meter right now for Alabama after they played their last 2.5 games like this? I'm putting it at a solid 7 because, again, we saw against Vanderbilt, we saw against Georgia, the secondary is absolute Swiss cheese at times, and it feels like it's not really solid at the critical points in the game that it needs to be. You see that Carson Beck was 5 for 17 on deep throws. Georgia knew that they had a secondary problem. And in Alabama, it was the most times ever in the Kirby Smart era that 17, that many throws, 17 traveled 20 plus yards down the field. We saw what Vanderbilt did again with those 40 points on that secondary. And, you know, the national numbers wouldn't really suggest that Alabama's not good in the secondary because they are in the top third of the country of total defense. But you've seen what they've been in the last 2.5 games. Now, we know they're going to be in shootouts. There's no question about that. They have one of the best offenses in the country. And when you look at some of the other games that are coming up on their schedule, I think, you know, the game against LSU in a couple of weeks, that's going to be a shootout there. If Missouri decides to come and play, which I believe they will, they've been a solid ranked team all season. And then, you know, if Tennessee decides to wake that offense up this weekend as well and actually give Alabama a run for their money, we know Alabama is going to be in shootouts for the rest of the year because of how their defense is. You have incidents like Malachi Moore happening on the field during the Vanderbilt game, just straight up refusing the leadership and really the superiority, things that we wouldn't see in the Saban days. I don't want to necessarily harp on the Saban era being gone because we know that. Okay, NIL pushed Nick Saban out. That's why Kalen DeBoer's in, and I've been saying that Kalen DeBoer is going to be successful. But there is reason to panic, and the incident like Malachi Moore, it's not something that we would have seen with Nick Saban. If you shut this team down offensively, they're going to struggle because they're going to struggle to stop you. And we see them in the South Carolina game. They come out, they go up 14-0. That defense had Alabama struggling, and it felt like you had Alabama boxed in a corner. You were just waiting for the punch out, the delivery, the blow to be the one to win the fight, to be the one to win that matchup in Tuscaloosa, upset them, drop them even more. But it doesn't play out that way. Once Alabama goes up 14-0, they struggled for points really until the fourth quarter, and it was 2 touchdown runs. Jalen Milroe was efficient, 16 of 23 in this game, but he did throw 2 interceptions, and it feels pretty lucky for Alabama to win this game. Let's just call it what it is, because South Carolina, again, did everything in order to try to deliver that final blow in the matchup, and because at the end of the day, South Carolina, they're not as competent as some other teams in SEC, but they do deserve their place in the conference. Don't get me wrong about that. They did everything they could. They locked up Bama for mostly 3 quarters. They get that crazy onside kick. They benefit from the pass interference to get the insane corner of the end zone touchdown to Nick Harbor. That, that penalty moves them down the field. They draw up the perfect the absolute perfect 2-point try, and they just airmail it to lose the game. If Sellers was just a little bit of a better quarterback and took a little mustard off that ball, don't airmail it as much, you're tying the game with Alabama and you're going to overtime, or at least in that moment, you are tied. Okay, we don't know what could have happened after the fact. We saw that South Carolina comes out with a weird game plan. Instead of trying for field goal, they just throw one up. Alabama picks it, and that's the game. But with South Carolina turning the ball over 4 times, and one of those being the game's final play on the interception, you're not going to win a football game like that. And that's not hard to see. That is something that Alabama will be able to overcome, that Kalen DeBoer does overcome, because they are that pedigree of football team and just the personnel and players. Now, you did see, Alabama's defense tighten up some, but still giving up almost 27, or giving up those 25 points and what could have been 27 to South Carolina. It's just more to be desired. You want to know how Alabama's defense, just in, kind of one stat line, as you know that it's reeling. Alabama is 19 of 33 defensively on third down, getting off the field between Vandy and South Carolina. They are 7 of 8 on fourth downs going back to the Georgia game. Now, that is a bit padded because Georgia did go 5 for 5 on fourth downs in that crazy potential game of the year. They allowed a 36-yard touchdown pass on fourth down versus South Carolina, and it looked great. In terms of the touchdown pass, the Alabama defense did not. 104 rushing yards for Alabama, 4 sacks allowed. The offensive line was just getting pushed around in this game, and this is another indicator. If you get physical with this team, if you push them around, you are going to see people have an advantage on the Crimson Tide. And that feels really weird to say, but this is what Alabama is at this point in the season. It's 3 straight weeks where they're struggling to close it out, where they're struggling to finish ball games. And that is not something we've seen from Alabama in recent years and really over the last decade. I don't mean to compare everything to Saban, but God, Saban, kind of made the Tide what they are, and that's the standard. You don't want to accept anything less. But that was the thing under Nick Saban, is they didn't struggle to put their foot on the throat under Saban. That's what made Nick so great. They didn't struggle to put games away. That's what made Nick and Alabama so great. And they had every right, they had every chance in the Georgia game, maybe not so much the Vandy game, but especially the South Carolina game, to put it away. And you just don't have, it just doesn't happen. You give up that onside kick that just looks laughable at the time that it happens. I want to say there was a penalty before that I think had the kick retried or something, but it was a crazy game. I love, as a Georgia fan, as you know, to see Alabama get tested in this way. And Alabama's just got a lot of thinking to do. They got a heck of a schedule coming up again. They got LSU. They got Missouri. They're going to play Tennessee. That doesn't even include the playoffs that they're going to walk into. So Alabama does escape South Carolina 27-25. They look shaky for, you could say, their third game in a row, but technically 2.5 games. And we're going to have to see what happens with the Tide as they walk into Tennessee, into Knoxville this weekend. I don't know who I have winning that game yet. It's going to be a really good game. Not here to give a prediction, but I'm very happy to see Alabama and Tennessee at this point in the season, because these two teams have kind of reeled back to see what they're actually capable of here. Oregon edges out Ohio State in a Big Ten thriller, much like we saw. Thought that said 32-21, just like we saw when Georgia and Alabama play the SEC thriller a few weeks ago. Oregon edges out Ohio State by 1 point, 32-31. And this game absolutely delivered on all aspects. We had Dan Lanning versus Ryan Day, 2 great quarterbacks prospects, and Will Howard versus Dylan Gabriel. Just the way that both of these defenses were playing, the way that the game swung kind of back and forth a couple of times. And overall, it was a wire to wire, rope to rope type of game. It was pretty neck and neck. It didn't feel like it didn't feel like at any point that either of these teams were really going to escape and actually run away with this one. And it was just a really good game to watch. I was blessed to be able to watch every snap of it, and knowing that we could see this matchup again. We just possibly previewed the Big Ten championship. And I know that was a lot of storylines around the game, and probably everyone out there is saying that, but that's a fact. And to think that you can see this matchup again, that's what makes it so exciting to see. Just to take the data away from this game and then watch when they possibly play later on in the year and maybe even in the college football playoffs. each team trading blows in this game was just so admirable. I mean, that's what both of these teams were supposed to do. There was, good stretches of defensive play from both sides of the ball, and then it felt like Oregon or Ohio State would kind of give up some bigger plays, and there was just touchdown after touchdown. Both of them with the field goal at the end of the game, really to make it a 1-point game, and that's what it ended up being, was a 1-point victory. You got to love how Harmon comes out early in the game, stripping Judkins to make that no interception call, which I'll talk about a little later in the take of this game. I thought that was an absolutely great play, and Oregon scores off of that after a stale first drive. I thought Dylan Gabriel, again, talking about the quarterbacks, Dylan Gabriel had a beautiful touchdown pass to, I have Starks type, but I know that's not correct, Stewart. I kept misunderstanding them. Dylan Gabriel had that really nice passing touchdown to Stewart, and then Johnson to take the lead after that really weird onside botch kicked. And, Dylan Gabriel even looked a little more athletic and probably improved his draft stock a little bit over Will Howard, at least for my liking. I've kind of always liked him over Will Howard, but when you see the athleticism on a 27-yard touchdown run in that pivotal point of the game, you're at home, you're trying to beat the number 2 team in the country. He performed when he needed to, and Will Howard on his counterpart as well. He looked equally as nice. He had a touchdown pass go up 28-22 across his body on the run to Jeremiah Smith, if I'm not mistaken. Very impressive on the last drive of the game, dealing to Ibuka, dealing to Jeremiah Smith as well to move them down the field. And Ohio State, their defense, number one, not number one defense, but that big time defense in the country, and we know what they always support with support and sport with the defensive side of the ball. Even though they gave up almost 500 yards of offense, they still had a nice critical stop on 4th and goal in this game that could have made it go, a different direction. But when you look at both of these teams on the tape, when you see how they played overall, Oregon just felt faster. They felt more explosive. And I think they scored in such ways on big plays. It felt like Ohio State was a little more methodical. You had the run in with, you had the run in with Will Howard. You had the short play in the red zone. And that's not to say that they didn't have big plays and kind of compared with Oregon on that aspect. I just thought Oregon looked better from the eye test. I think they're just, like I said, they're faster. They're more explosive. Some are going to call me crazy for saying this. I like Dan Lanning over Ryan Day. I really do. Dan Lanning is a super likable guy. You could argue he's the best young coach in college football right now. And, and again, watching him and Ryan Day go back and forth was absolutely fantastic. But, they always say you got 60 minutes to win, 4 full quarters. You got to play every snap, and that's what Oregon did. And I believe Oregon was the better team, clearly coming out of this game, and that's why they deserved to win it. I just thought they were better, situationally. You do have to shout out Ohio State, though, for holding Oregon out of the end zone on 4 straight goal-to-go snaps. That, again, that defense bending but not breaking, kept their offense in the game at that point. And otherwise, Ohio State would have had to score a touchdown to possibly win the ball game instead of a field goal. But this is one of the games that I've watched in a while where you could really just give this recap and talk about the game-changing plays. And I'm just going to go through them here, kind of give a little comments around them, and then you'll really see how this game played out. For lack of better words, if you didn't watch this game snap for snap and get some good analysis on it, just this stint of plays will really tell you the game, the pivotal points of the game. So let's start with early off on the first play, within the first 5 minutes of the game, the first offensive drive for Ohio State. There was no review on an early complete pass by Ohio State that should have been called an interception for Oregon. It was on the first drive. When you go back on the replay review, it's clearly a pick, and good for Ohio State and Ryan Day and Will Howard for, getting out there, getting the snap off so it wasn't reviewable. So they did right in that aspect, but everybody at home knew, everybody in the stadium upon the review knew that it was an interception that Oregon should have had, and that got taken from them. There was the 2 botched field goals from Oregon as well, to where they could have won more in this, they could have put up more points in this football game. The impromptu onside kick that Ohio State ended up botching, the player tries to jump out of the way of it. Oregon recovers. They end up scoring on that drive as well. Will Howard fumbling the snap on 3rd and 7 after Ohio State had the 4th and goal stop in this game. They just had a big completion, and they probably could have got points. They were still inside their own 30-yard line, but they were moving up the field. They had just, I think, had a play from inside their 10 to get them to that point. There was a defensive pass interference, Yes, there was the defensive pass interference on Stewart as Dylan Gabriel overthrew him on the left side of the field. Could have been another touchdown. Oregon could have broken open more in that aspect. I think it was, is it Denzel Burks that people are saying? Whatever Ohio State corner got picked on, I believe he was the one that grabbed Stewart. He obviously knew he was out of position, trying to save the touchdown. I want to say Oregon scored on that drive. Anyways, the most controversial play of the game. And the most controversial moment of the game, really the best parts of the game were the last minute, 45 seconds, last 2 minutes where Ohio State was coming down the field. Again, shout out Will Howard for those darts he was throwing on the sidelines and just through the field to Jeremiah Smith and Ibuka. Ibuka in a bucket. I heard one of the announcers say that. That was absolutely great. So the offensive pass interference called on Ohio State on the final drive, Jeremiah Smith. It was the right call. I know everyone's kind of wondering what happened. You got some people out there saying that they don't agree with the call. They were being physical all game. They're always going to call that. It's a close game. It's not even the fact that Oregon's at home, but you're going to call that. Like, ref's right there. You extend. The Oregon player goes back, and that's just clearly, I won't even say a boneheaded play, just a unintelligent play, a bad situational moment. Let me keep it at that. I don't like to call these players dumb or bad or unintelligent because they're not. They are at this level of play for a reason. And a lot of these guys go to the league. Same when I talk about the NFL. It was just a bad situational play for a young player, Jeremiah Smith. It was called, didn't help him out too much. And it felt like Ohio State was driving. I thought Ohio State was going to go down and win that football game on a field goal because Oregon was kind of giving them whatever they wanted. The clock rolling once the penalty happened, which cost them about 7 seconds in a critical moment. And you just got to have situational awareness there. What is Will Howard hearing in the headset from Ryan Day? What are the teammates saying to each other? Are they aware that the rules are like that the clock is going to start rolling? And you see Will Howard, really trying to get the snap off, waving his hand a lot, by his thigh to get the snap, and they get it off in time, but they burned 7 seconds in a critical moment. So just short situational lapses for Ohio State kept them out of this game. Obviously Will Howard not sliding quickly enough to end the game. You have to be more situationally aware there. You got people calling him a moron of a quarterback, which again, I don't necessarily like that. From an outsider looking in, you do wonder what's going on there. But let's talk about the big brain moment of the day that probably won Dan Lanning this game. And if anything, is a reason why Oregon should have won this football game. So if you watch the game, you saw that there was an intentional 12 men on the field penalty from Oregon within the final snaps of the game. There was 10 seconds left. Dan Lanning intentionally puts 12 men on the field. There were 10 seconds left. Oregon calls a timeout. State, and obviously on that anyways. So, it kind of would have stopped it before it happened. The ball snapped. There's no big gain, but obviously it's a penalty. Or excuse me, let me take that back. So he has 12 men on the field to make sure that no big gain works. You're literally up one man. Ball is snapped, no big gain. And if it's kind of hard to follow this, I understand it really is just a mastery of the rule book. And like, you got to be a football geek to really be tapped into this moment, which I know a ton of you that watch the show are. Love y'all for that. Ball snap, no big gain. Obviously, it's a penalty, but 4 seconds tick off the clock. Again, no big gain. 6 seconds are now left. There's only time for one play into which Will Howard doesn't slide quickly enough. Doesn't slide quickly enough. Ohio State loses on that, and Oregon storms the field. But like I said, Oregon was a better team. I think they deserved to win. Again, they look faster. They look more explosive. I like Dan Lanning over Ryan Day. There was a lot of people, everyone's got their opinions and predictions when we come into the season that they were saying like, Adam, Oregon is not that team in the Big Ten. And I picked Ohio State to win this game. Even though they were on the road and Oregon's been what they've been, I just felt like they were kind of more built for the moment, and we've even seen Oregon's O-line earlier in the year. I was kind of concerned about it. They're giving up a good bit of sacks. Dylan Gabriel not looking super effective, but both of these quarterbacks had pretty good pockets today. And I just think Dylan Gabriel was a better guy. I think he outplayed Will Howard. I think, like I said, Dan Lanning outcoaches Ryan Day just a tad bit. Those situational moments are what's going to define you when the college football playoffs comes around. Y'all get in the chat, get in the comments. I would love to see y'all down there. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll get to the break here in a minute. Don't want to make y'all go crazy with that. Tennessee slips by Florida in overtime, 23-17. And we were all premature. I was premature calling Tennessee national championship contenders. And this is one thing, that I've always kind of been caught up with about football, but you still have to respect it because of the offensive output. But when you don't play anybody, and you're highly ranked and you have yet to play the meat of your schedule, which is going to include your SEC conference games, it's hard to judge you, but we can't take away a 69-point outing versus Chattanooga, a 71-point outing versus, I can't remember the team it was, blowing out NC State, 52-10, if I'm not mistaken, there on the score. But Tennessee has now met a little bit of their match in the SEC. They now see these are the teams we're going to have to go through. These are the teams that we're probably going to see in the playoffs, not Florida, of course, not NC State, of course. But when we talk about the meat of their schedule, like we will here in a minute, they're just having to adjust to SEC play. And again, when your schedule is weak, a lot of people are going to call you good. I was definitely premature calling them national championship contenders, but they look solid. The win over Oklahoma, very overrated. I think Oklahoma is arguably the most overrated team in college football. I know they're dealing with injuries. They're offensively broken. I don't think they should be ranked. And the win against NC State, I'm not sold on. NC State had to take up some bottom 20s of the rankings earlier in the year because we just didn't know anything yet. But again, Tennessee, they feel kind of fraudulent since stepping into SEC play, and especially with competition stepping up. Alabama's next, which just as I'm talking about this game and as I was researching this game to recap on, it feels like Alabama's going to win that game, just seeing how these two teams have played lately. Alabama's next. Georgia and Vanderbilt are two of the final three games for Tennessee. And Tennessee's passing game has absolutely disappeared here lately. Nico Iamaleava has been disappointing since the competition stepped up. Again, Oklahoma, overrated, fundamentally broken. NC State is NC State. I'm not impressed by those ranked wins. Those don't matter to me because you're going to play way tougher people later in the year. And even I think even Tennessee at 11 is still a bit overrated. I won't even lie to you. I think they're a bit overrated at 11, but the rankings are going to be the rankings, and teams are going to take up the spots that the poll wants them to take up. But offense hasn't been impressive once they started playing this competition. Under 20 points per game in the SEC games that they've played. Obviously, bukus of points more when they're playing outside of the conference. Now, Nico did come out in this game with a couple of nice strikes for a couple first downs, but then his turnover issues continued. Opening drive, fumble, just plays later. And Tennessee's defense is the reason they won this game, and it took the offense a minute to get going. They better be thanking Dylan Sampson for literally putting the team on his back and being able to make it happen. But Tennessee's defense shows up early. They had a couple of first quarter and third quarter, a couple of first quarter, 3rd and 1 to actually test them. And then they stand up Trey Wilson on the 4th and 1 in the second quarter. They forced that fumble on the goal line on Graham Mertz, which I thought was a great play. Graham Mertz probably should go down before that play happens, but shout out to the guys that were able to get their hands in there and cause that fumble. But just wow from Tennessee's defense, being able to really keep them in it in a very ugly, scrappy game where you have Florida up 10-0 on you. And they could have easily been up 17, 20 plus to nothing on you. But we saw Florida driving on Tennessee's defense. When you get Tennessee to play out in space and you get your receivers out in space Florida was kind of flashing some speed there, and they were just scheming their guys up, being physical. Those runs from Montrell Johnson, you felt them start to wear on Tennessee. Now, Florida was outplaying Tennessee on a couple of key drives in this game. And then Tennessee's defense, as I've said, as they've done all year, as they'll continue to do, it'll save the day. They had a 3rd and 14 at the end of the first half that they were able to get stood up on. In respect to Josh Heupel for putting some fight back in his guys. 4th and 1 call inside your own 20. Tennessee converts. But then Nico stares down his receivers, holds the ball for a little too long, which has been his fatal flaw here lately. And he throws an interception. So now Nico has turned the ball over twice in this game. And when you just look drive for drive, Florida had multiple drives in the first half stalled on later downs. Tennessee should have lost this football game. But as we always say, the better team usually wins. And they played better situationally. Graham Mertz is decent. DJ Lagway is a true freshman. We've had our conversations about Billy Napier. But the incompetence on too many men on the field at the end of the first half drive with a field goal. The incompetence at the end of drives, and maybe not so much incompetence, but again, Tennessee's defense, the front 4, the front 7, it is legit. It is going to give people problems. Florida, just how weird of a game this was. Florida was 12-3 when leading at halftime under Billy Napier, albeit it was 3-0, could have been 6-0. Again, I think they should have had about 10 points walking into halftime. Tennessee was 1-12 under Josh Heupel when losing at halftime. So you wonder what could have really happened in this game. Well, what did happen was better coaching, and that's why Tennessee escaped. It could have, like I said, could have easily been 17-0, 20+0 for Florida, but they stalled drives. That Tennessee defense came in and did what they did. And, I'll just go ahead and say, listen, this won't fly down the road for Tennessee. And Tennessee fans know that. We understand that. But it has to be said, because for Tennessee to be considered in the conversations they've been considered in, to have the rankings that they do, it's not going to fly. It will not fly. It's a flaw of theirs. And it could definitely get exposed. Again, if you get physical, if you get your guys in space, a lot of the fundamental things that, bend football teams out of shape. But Tennessee gets gifted with an awful DJ Lagway pick. They only mustered a field goal while being in the red zone. They ended that they ended that drive on a 4th and long. So more missed opportunities for that Tennessee offense. But all you got to do is call Dylan Sampson, one of the best running backs in the nation, come and have him come in, save their life in the game, with the only 3 touchdowns of the game all coming off of Dylan Sampson's legs, including the one to win it in overtime. Florida could have easily won this game. But Tennessee was slightly better due to their defense, holding it down for a true freshman quarterback in DJ Lagway, a decent quarterback in Graham Mertz, and Billy Napier has been Billy Napier for the time he's been there, for lack of better words. But yeah, this was a concerning one for Tennessee, and Tennessee looked concerning after the Arkansas game. Nico's passing game is drying up. Nico is turning the ball over. He is staring down his receivers. He is holding the ball for too long because he's playing that higher level of competition. And like I said, Alabama's next. I'll probably go ahead and say on the show, I got Alabama winning the game. I don't know the over-under. I don't know who's favored. I know they're in Knoxville. I got Alabama winning the game. But you got Georgia and Vanderbilt for 2 of your last 3 games of the year. Now, Georgia comes to your house, but you go to Vandy to end the season. So it'll be interesting to see how Tennessee shakes out. They're a 1-loss football team right now. I think they could very well, what's it called? I think Florida. I think Tennessee could very well, be a 3-loss football team, and I think in the SEC, possibly, it could be hard to get in as a 3-loss team. Shout out to my cousin Ryan, who supports the show and watches the show as well. Him and I had a really good conversation about how it would be possible for a 3-loss team to sneak into the college football playoff, which I didn't think necessarily would be. But yeah, y'all get in the chat, get in the comments. Let me know what you think about Alabama escaping South Carolina, Tennessee escaping Florida, and Oregon and Ohio State playing an absolutely great game as well. That Big Ten thriller. This has been episode 76 of the NFL with AJL. I appreciate everybody jumping into the podcast tonight. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here tapped in with us on the show. Appreciate y'all bearing with us on a little bit of the week-by-week podcast that we've been having. It's been a crazy week for life and for business, but we're still doing our best to bring you guys the content as well. I know Alan wasn't on the show with us tonight to do the AA to recap the college football stuff. He hasn't left. He just needed to take a little bit of a breather tonight, so I told him it was good. I would hold it down, and we would be back. But yes, please, all the things that you do for the show to support us, the QR code in the corner of the screen is every bit of social media and podcast content. This is episode 76. Appreciate y'all bearing with us on a little bit of the reschedule as well. I know we said 7, then 7:45, got on a little bit after 7:50, but I got to make sure it's locked in for you guys. And I'm looking to get leverage for the show as well. I might as well put this out there. If you are familiar with YouTube thumbnails, SEO description on social media, cutting up medium, short form content, TikToks, or kind of the 7 to 10 minute clips I put out on YouTube for when we talk about, the whole subjects of the show, I would love to have a conversation with you. I'm looking to hire out people for the show to help with the content so we can be more consistent, really just focus on, researching and podcasting and everything else taken care of with all the post-production and everything. You can leave a super chat, a super thanks, a super like. You can hit us up on social media if you want to donate directly to the show, monetarily, give to the cause of the NFL with AJL. As always, we're sponsored by Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs, buying a home, selling a home, investing in real estate. They also just launched a real estate meetup south of Atlanta in the cute little town of Peachtree City. Get at them on social media or get I don't know what I was about to say. Get at them on social media. You can get on their exclusive newsletter. You can get on their monthly market reports, and you can even be involved in the Peachtree City Real Estate Investing Meetup that's hosted by Buy and Sell with AJL. And as always, we're sponsored by PlayStation Online. At PlayStation Online, use code AJL at checkout. You'll get a nice benefit there when you buy some merch. Again, they can put it on a hat, they can put it on a hoodie, they can put it on dang near any piece of apparel that you want. The best collab for gaming and worship at PlayStation Online. Appreciate y'all and Buy and Sell with AJL for always being sponsors of the show. Let's go ahead and jump into the NFL segment of the show. We are called the NFL with AJL here. And on episode 76, we're going to jump right into the spicy news of the day as Davante Adams was traded to the New York Jets for a conditional third-round pick. It upgrades to a second rounder based on playing time. Does this make the Jets better enough to get them out of the 2-4 hole? I'll just say down the stretch, I have the Jets going 7-4 down the stretch. They're 2-4 right now. That slots them at 9-8. I don't know if that's enough in the AFC. The Ravens look great. The Bills look great. Now, there is a little bit of confusion at the bottom of the division. The Texans look good. Yeah, the Bengals are struggling a little bit. The Dolphins might be missing out on some of those aspects. You know what the Raiders are. Clearly, they might be blowing it up. They send Adams to the Chiefs. But does this really make the New York Jets better to get them out of that 2-4 hole? I think it does in a way. Obviously, we know what Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers have done, but Davante's a veteran. He's a guy who not only gets in the end zone, but gets his targets, gets his production, gets his yards. He can mentor a Garrett Wilson, a potential Breece Hall, give Aaron Rodgers that confidence to know that Mike Williams isn't going to slip and miss a pass, or that, Garrett Wilson isn't going to potentially not drag his toes, or Breece Hall is going to fumble. And we knew those were some of the things with Aaron Rodgers coming in. And now Aaron Rodgers has one of the best wide receivers in the NFL over the last few years, and one of the best wide receivers he's ever played with. Yes, he's had Alan Lazard, and I believe there was another. I thought there was another receiver that Aaron Rodgers was trying to do Aaron Rodgers things with, and basically get him recruited to the team, no matter what. So it will help in the sense of familiarity and veteran leadership and production. There's no doubt about that. If you put Davante Adams just about with any team in the NFL, in a way, even if it's only by a win or two, they're going to make them better. At some point, his production will put them in a position to win. Now, the Jets are paying the rest of Davante Adams' salary. The Raiders aren't paying any of it. Originally, the Jets were going to have to pay just over $84 million, which was left on his contract. He had a cap hit this year of I think his contract this year was $17 million annually. About $11 million was due on it, but over the next 2 years, it would be $36 million each for each year. Jets said not so fast. They reworked the deal. New Jets wide receiver Davante Adams already has restructured his contract to lower the salary cap number this season to $3.21 million per sources. This gives the Jets capability to make a move at the trade deadline, which I'm curious now. Did I just say something dumb and maybe the trade deadline's already passed us? When is it? No. Okay. So we got 3 weeks. It's 4 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday, November 5th. That is when the trade deadline officially ends. So, what's up, Bruns? Yes, sir. Jets will be playing for a playoff spot at the end of the year. A couple of games at the end will decide it. I don't know, bro. I got him going 9-8. Like I said, Davante's good. He's going to make any team better. He's going to make Aaron Rodgers feel more familiar. But, yeah. So, this gives the Jets a chance to be viable at the trade deadline. And even better, there's 2 voidable years that were added to the deal, and the two sides now will discuss his future in New York after this season. So, it kind of pisses you off as maybe a fan of a team that wanted Davante Adams. I never thought the Saints were going to get him. We don't have any damn money. And even if we did get him, we'd probably piss him off just as bad as in Las Vegas because the Saints are still doing Saints things. But the Jets just gave up a conditional third-round pick. It'll probably upgrade to a second based on playing time. I'm sure Davante is going to play most of the season here in New York for $3.21 million for a guy who's going to good bit make your offense better. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Now, there are talks of Mike Williams being traded now that Davante Adams is there. It was disgusting that Aaron Rodgers scapegoated him in the postgame presser for falling down, and now he's going to be shipped out. But this just feels it just feels a little confusing, right? You fire Robert Saleh 5 games into the Aaron Rodgers era, 5 full games, 6 if you want to be technical with the 4 snaps that Aaron Rodgers took last year on the opening game. Then you trade for a hurt wide receiver who suddenly might be ready for the next game, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 4-2, which I have you losing to fall to 2-5. Can you dig yourself out of that? Eventually, you will be mathematically disqualified from making the playoffs, all behind a still bad offensive line that's been bad for well over 3 seasons now. We still see Aaron Rodgers, like, the ball's got to get out quick. When it gets out quick, it looks good. When Aaron Rodgers has to go through progressions, he has to move, he has to maneuver, throw off his back foot. That's when they can still do it. They had a chance to win the game last night. They can 100% still do it. Touchdown pass to Garrett Wilson with the 2 feet. The touchdown pass from Aaron Rodgers kind of over the middle into the end zone. Like, Aaron Rodgers can still make those type of plays. But the O-line's still bad. And Aaron Rodgers isn't looking to be like that Aaron Rodgers we knew. Clearly, I'm saying a point that we all understand here, but it still ties into the confusion. You fire Robert Saleh 5 games into the Aaron Rodgers era. You trade for a hurt wide receiver. You get him for a great deal. So who cares if he's hurt? If you got him this year for $3 million and he doesn't play a snap and he wants to be committed to you for the next 2 years, maybe even 1, to maybe go chase a ring with Aaron Rodgers in New York, that's cool. Really, everything Davante Adams does is a plus because the man signed a fat contract with the Raiders, which it kind of made his contract feel like it was untradeable. Now we have teams eat dead cap and all those aspects that can change it up. But I guess here's my final sentiment on this. It does make the Jets better. I still don't think they make the playoffs. They got him for a steal. I'm still a little confused because of the track record of everything. And if y'all been watching the show, I said it before the season that the Jets should run from Aaron Rodgers. Don't walk, run away from Aaron Rodgers. And my reasons were the following. His personal traits, and I'm okay, this is one of the few times that I will mention a quarterback's personal traits, but unfortunately, however you want to look at it, the media coverage from the teams he's been on and his appearances on the Pat McAfee show have made us understand that he can be a little condescending. Aaron Rodgers can kind of be an asshole. We can throw some of his teams under the bus. He'll bicker with the coach. He tries to be the GM. He tries to be the head coach. So, his personal traits, the lack of commitment for the new players, which I think we're clearly seeing this year. I think he's kind of getting on the page with Garrett Wilson, but you can kind of almost still feel the tension when there's not a connection between the two of them when it's a pass that Aaron Rodgers has put right there. And you know it. You see it on TV. You see Garrett Wilson kind of look over at Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers just kind of, poker facing it, but up here, Aaron Rodgers is pissed. He's a 4-time MVP. He has every right to be. He came to a bottom 5 organization, arguably front office wise, in the NFL for whatever reason. So he's going to have some say. You're going to see him get pissed off. But in that same sentiment, he still needs to be able to bond with these players. He was an aging quarterback, and he likes to run the show. Oh, Randall Cobb, I believe, was the other Jet that is that Aaron Rodgers bargained for. But we've seen him bargain for Randall Cobb. So I'm bargained for Allen Lazard. Let me get Davante Adams in here. People can say what they want about Aaron Rodgers pushing Robert Saleh off from the hug on the sideline, but that just feels a little different now that a few weeks later we see what's played out. 2-4, coach is fired. Are you panic trading for a wide receiver? Not really, because you got him for cheap. That is kind of a high draft pick, but his talent's definitely worth it when he's healthy. And it kind of seems like everything we've come Aaron Rodgers, we've come to know with Aaron Rodgers, what he's come to be, is now coming to fruition. Coach is fired 5 games in. He has one of his favorite receivers of the last few years with him. but we still see the personality. We still see the lack of commitment to blending with to meshing with young players. So, again, it'll work out in its time. Like my buddy Brun said, who just tapped into the show. Love you, bro. I still need to get you those birthday gifts. I think the Jets are going to finish 9-8. They might sneak in because of how weird the AFC is this year and just kind of the parody of the NFL. But yeah, Davante Adams traded to the Jets. We'll see what New York is going to do with the situation. I'm going to get to your comments, friends, before we go to the next topic. Graziano said they built the house without the foundation. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. If you build a house on pencils and cardboard, it's not going to withstand a storm when adversity comes. If you pour a slab 6 feet deep or build a basement that's fundamentally sound or put a crawl space on that thing, yeah, it'll be better. It's a great analogy. That is the problem with a lot of NFL teams. You build the house without the foundation. That's the number one killer of relationships is uncommunicated expectations. That's what we see a lot. Bad communication with these front offices. You got to have an alignment. Shout out Colin Cowherd for telling me this. That old head's taught me something. You have your owner. Owner has to be in alignment with head coach. Owner has to be in alignment with president. President has to be in alignment with GM. Probably flop the two. I feel like the GM kind of has more say over the president. Underneath that is the head coach. Underneath that is the quarterback. If those four pillars aren't necessarily lined up from the jump, you're not going to be a formidable franchise. Look at the Saints right now. Look at the Jets right now. Look at what the Browns were doing. Look at the Panthers going through multiple coaches and quarterbacks. David Tepper wanted Bryce Young, but Dave Canales wanted CJ Stroud. The head coach wanted CJ Stroud, but the owner said, I want the mini Kyler Murray, who's not durable and who has now been benched, and who knows what the future is going to be. I mean, for Christ's sake, you have Bryce Young in his second year. They're talking about if he's going to get traded to a team that needs a quarterback. So, all right, I'm off that. Y'all know I think that coaching is everything in the NFL, and when you don't have a good coach, when you don't have a good quarterback, or if you have a delusional owner or GM, hell will ensue without question. The Commanders narrowly fall to the Ravens 30-23. I'll break down this game a little bit, but I just want to really give a shout out to the Washington Commanders here because they're a sneaky team in the NFC. The Washington Commanders are a very sneaky team in the NFC right now. I think they are the best team in their division, and they have a budding superstar at Jaden Daniels. And I think it's no irony that the NFL had Washington and Baltimore play this year. Heisman winner versus Heisman winner. Dual threat quarterbacks. Jaden mimics his play like crazy. And this team can be an NFC sleeper. I mean, no doubt about it. The Washington Commanders can be an NFC sleeper. They look so promising. And they're proving me insanely wrong compared to what I thought in the preseason. I did not like the Dan Quinn hire. I don't really care for defensive-minded coaches anymore. DeMeco Ryans, probably the one exception. I know there's a couple of other ones out there I can't think off the top of my head, but for the most part, I want to see an offensive-minded head coach. I wasn't really feeling the Cliff Kingsbury offensive coordinator hire. Clearly, he's helping things happen with Jaden Daniels. Having the chance to go on the road into Baltimore to go 5-1. 5-1? That's among the best records in the NFL. Who out there would have thought that the Washington Commanders, with the roster they built with Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury calling the shots, that they would be sitting here with a chance to go 5-1. They fall to 4-2, but you can't blame the guys. Jaden Daniel was going toe-to-toe with Lamar Jackson. There was no turnover, so they won the turnover battle. You're on the road against a hot Ravens team who's won 4 straight. And Washington, they look like the best in the division. I mean, they are one of the best teams in the NFC right now. Genuinely. They are. They look good. They look very good. And you see the relationship between Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin growing every week. Austin Eckler is doing Austin Eckler things. Luke McCaffrey as well. Jaden Daniels is comfortable already making veteran moves to like look off the safety in the end zone and then look back just to hold that defense to throw that strike to Terry McLaurin. That fourth quarter, it might have been. That second touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin, Chef's kiss. Terry McLaurin diving in the corner of the end zone. Jaden put it right there. Jaden Daniels is a star, man. And just, this is a perfect example of when you get your quarterback, you can miss on a couple of other things. But when you get your quarterback, protect the guy, okay? Don't let it be like RG3. Don't let it be an Alex Smith situation. Don't let it be like Joe Burrow continuing to get beat up, because Jaden Daniels in his rookie year is on pace for 4,000 yards passing, 18 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, just under 1,000 yards rushing with double-digit rushing touchdowns. Would you take that out of your number 2 overall pick? Let me just ask this question. Would you take that out of your quarterback if that was the guy to come in for your franchise and you needed a new guy under center, a new signal caller? I won't let you answer because I know the answer is correct. I know the answer is yes, and I thought so. Jaden Daniels is him. Jaden Daniels is looking great. He arrived when they beat the Bengals earlier in the year. Now, I did maybe want to see that. I do want to see that defense perform better, but it was against the Ravens, all things. I love seeing the Michigan boy, Mike Sainristil, who was great on that Michigan defense last year when they won the title, making his first career interception on Lamar Jackson as well. Jaden Daniels just continuing to establish himself more in this offense. And he did all this with the offense only punting 3 times. Commanders only held the ball for 23 seconds, 23 minutes, 52 seconds, 52 rushing yards, and they were 4 of 12 on third down and still came within a score, just a play or two from beating the Baltimore Ravens. They made it competitive. Yes, I know Baltimore was up 27-13 at one point, but Jaden Daniels engineered that corner touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin and put them back in the game. So it was close from wire to wire. You can't take anything away from Washington. It's hard to contain that. It's hard to contain that offense with Derrick Henry in Baltimore. Okay, Derrick Henry is on pace for another 2,000-yard season. Y'all realize that? Y'all realize ever since Lamar Jackson started putting the ball in Derrick Henry's belly like it should have been, they haven't lost a game. They haven't. They committed to the run, and the run is committing to them. So it's going to be hard to stop that team. Baltimore is one of the best teams in the NFL right now. They look like the Baltimore of last year, kind of a little better in a way. I know they started 0-2. That's a long shot. They could have easily beat Kansas City and be 5-1 off of a shoe size. You know what I mean? So you got to give credit to Washington here, okay? I picked Baltimore to win this game, and rightfully so. I think a lot of people would have picked Baltimore to win. But the way that Washington came out, I mean, Commanders fans, go ahead and come back out. Go ahead and make yourself known to the public, because you've got a lot to be excited about. Now, we still need to see some situational things when it is, schedule does step up more. You have played a little bit of a weak schedule here lately. Yes, you do lose to the Ravens, but you were in that ball game to win. I think Washington's defense did decent. I don't like the 30 points, but I think they're improving over the weeks. Again, hard offense to keep up with. They had a couple of big plays that were led up to Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews. Zay Flowers did catch all 9 of his passes for 132 yards in this game. Derrick Henry did Derrick Henry type things. The Ravens did have drives of 93 and 94 yards off of 2 of the 3 punts that Washington, kicked to them. So it's hard to defend that, man. It's hard. Okay. And that's why, if I'm a Washington fan today, I am okay with the way we just lost. I'm okay with losing to a top 3, top 5 team, maybe top 2 team in the NFL. I'm fine with that. I've got my quarterback. My coach is doing what he needs to do. Cliff and Jaden are clearly doing something special. Washington has a lot to be excited about. And I think it started a couple of weeks ago with the Bengals, albeit the Bengals are what they are. But especially here against a 2-time MVP who has a chance to go back-to-back this year. I didn't think Lamar should have won MVP last year, but that's just me. Excitement, jubilation, positivity, and maybe a championship within the next 5 years for Washington. They've got their steps to take, but they're clearly in a new era, and Washington has found their guy. Oh boy, the part of the show where I have to control my emotions and not ramble, because I am a New Orleans Saints fan. The Saints lose to the Bucks 51-27. I'm going to touch on a few points in this. How much longer do the Saints have to suffer? How much longer do the Saints have to suffer under Dennis Allen? I'm not going to sit here and say the same things that I've said about the coach because we know he's bad. He's 26-50 as a head coach. The guy's going to get to 100 games coached and have a 30-something% winning record. Sean Payton was double that. Now, we know Dennis Allen isn't Sean Payton, but Sean Payton gave this guy his blessing. Mickey Loomis doesn't see anything wrong with this dude. Oh, they're out there smacking his gum on the damn podium, talking about all these legendary coaches, how they had their first seasons turn out into it. Dennis Allen is not a head coach. He's a decent defensive coordinator. As of now, the Saints are 32nd in the NFL in defense. So what are we holding on to here at this point? I told you the stat a couple of weeks ago about how Dennis Allen's defense is being down. Dennis Allen's defense is having to defend a 6-point lead or less between a minute and a half and 2 minutes to go. They're winless. They can't do it. We gave up the second most yards in Saints defense history. The defense gave up 44 points. Yes, Rashid Shaheed had the there was the scoop and score, which I thought should have been an incomplete pass, but your defense gave up 44 points, so it doesn't make it any better than 51. You gave up 594 yards of offense. You are dead last in the NFL in total defense. You are bad. You're in a nosedive. You're in a free fall, and you have to go on Thursday and face your former coach who might be the nail in the coffin. If there's one last thing that Sean Payton can maybe do for us, it's to come in, drop another 50 burger on the Saints' head, and get Dennis Allen the hell out of town. 26-50 as a head coach. We read the stat last year. Dennis Allen, out of the 130-something head coaches that have coached the X amount of games that he did at that point in his career, he's bottom 5 in win percentage. His defense is dead last in the NFL this year. His defense has given up 450-plus yards in 3 of the last 4 games. 460 yards to Philadelphia, albeit it was 15 points. But the Saints continue to find new ways to lose football games. We saw it against the Eagles with multiple turnovers. You have a chance to take the points and you don't. You saw it against the Falcons to where you hold a team to 4 field goals, but you give up the 2 touchdowns that you gift wrap to them. We see what they do against the Chiefs. That's not really a new way to lose. You just got blasted off the field. And then against the Bucks, you forced 3 interceptions from Baker Mayfield. Given if the 2 were tips or not, the ball still ended up in your hand on a drive where the Bucks initially had the ball. You have a punt return touchdown. You put up 27 points. You battle back after getting 17 unanswered put up on you. You put up 20 unanswered. You take a lead at some point in the game. How often has a team intercepted the ball 3 times, put up 27 points offensively, and had a punt return for a touchdown and lost? I'll tell you, the last team to do it was the 1950 Colts. So we're having to go back half centuries, 7, 8 decades to find how creative the Saints are getting with losing football games. It's just, it's nothing but a spotlight on the owner, the president, the GM. Miss Benson, you got to step up. But we know that Mickey Loomis is basically a partial owner now. Mickey Loomis is backing this guy. The Saints are cooked as long as Dennis Allen is in town. We're not going anywhere. We won't win anything of meaning with Dennis Allen as head coach. 26-50, dead last defense in the NFL. I understand the injuries are piling up, right? Don't get me wrong about that, okay? But I've watched snap for snap all 6 games the Saints have played this year, and they could easily be 4-2. At a bare minimum, you need to win that Philadelphia and Atlanta game. I know the injuries piled up in this one. The Bucs put up the most yards ever in Buccaneers franchise history. You gave up 51 points. So most points ever, I believe, in the Dennis Allen era. Or maybe not, because I know the Niners had, we had that 50-point shootout with the Niners when Dennis Allen put C.J. Gardner-Johnson as a rookie on George Kittle. Another Dennis Allen great moment. I lost my train of thought here. It's almost like I feel pointless complaining about this team, but it starts with the owner, Gail Benson. You take a look at the president, Dennis Lauscha. I don't know if they have too much involvement because it's Mickey Loomis, been doing the things, kicking the can down the road, the bound contracts. Dennis Allen is his boy. And you're going to miss the playoffs for the fourth straight year, probably. You don't have a very high chance at beating the Broncos because you have a rookie quarterback. Their defense is top 5 in the NFL. Sean Payton is going to probably drag the floor schematically with Dennis Allen. Sean Payton knows Dennis Allen's defense is. The game was bad. Obviously, the game was horrible. It's just another game of putrid output. It's another game of how much more can you continue to defend the leadership of this team. Because you can't, if you care, if you're a fan. You cannot continue to make excuses for what this team has been. They fooled me in the first 2 weeks. The Saints are the biggest frauds in the NFL right now. The New Orleans Saints are the biggest frauds in the NFL right now. You come out and you put up the 91 points, and they're looking at the graphic from the 09 Saints, and the Super Bowl is in New Orleans, and build the statue because it's Clint Kubiak. And I can understand struggling in the Eagles game because you lost your center. I understand it all, okay? But we're running out of excuses here, all right? We are. And if it's injuries, we got to take a look at Oshner Health. I'm sorry, but I'm getting so curious about the injuries with the Saints, and I'm re-looking at the Michael Thomas stories when he was talking about his misdiagnosis and Delvin Breaux. And I can't remember the other player, but there have been players in the past who feel like they're not getting properly diagnosed, and that's why they continue to get hurt. And what it feels like now for the 5th year in a row, the Saints are piled up with injuries, and confirmed for the 6th year in a row, the Saints have a quarterback injury. Drew Brees broke his thumb in 2018. Drew Brees hurt his ribs in 2019. In 2020, Jameis tore his ACL. In 2021, we shuffled a bunch of quarterbacks as well. In 2022, we had a shuffle of Andy Dalton. And then Derek Carr's been hurt last year, and Derek Carr's been hurt this year. But let's end on a good note before we get out of here, okay? I feel like I was kind of all over the place with that rant, but it's very simple. Saints defense is cooked. I don't know how much longer it is for Dennis Allen. Again, he's 26-50 as a head coach. That was on my Saints wish list coming into this year, and I don't know if it's going to happen. One of them was Kubiak. One of them was Alvin Kamara. Kamara, Olave, Shaheed. So kind of the offense. I wanted to see more of A.T. Perry, which waived. Is going to be the Bub Mean show probably on Thursday. And then Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis got to go. A.T. Perry was waived. Dennis Allen's not going anywhere, and neither is Loomis. Alvin Kamara looks like outside of those 2 weeks, he's not improving much because of what's around him. And Kubiak is doing the best he can. But if there's any sort of maybe bright light for the Saints before we get out of here on episode 76 of the NFL with AJL, is that Spencer Rattler got to make his NFL debut after Derek Carr's oblique injury against the Chiefs. And for all intents and purposes, Spencer Rattler did decent / good. 22 for 40, a little over 200 yards, a couple interceptions. And we saw what the game was for Spencer Rattler. 27-point third quarter. And it was really a tale of two halves. Todd Bowles kept the pressure off of Spencer Rattler in the first half, which was kind of surprising because Todd Bowles is one of the more blitz-heavy coaches in the NFL. But he also knew he had a guy that didn't have any tape on him. He didn't have any tape on Spencer Rattler in the NFL. So he let Spencer Rattler play his first half. He let the Saints do what they did in the second quarter. And then the exotic coverages and blitzes just ate Spencer Rattler alive. And he threw the couple of interceptions that he did, and the game was the game. But if you want to talk about the way Spencer Rattler moved, the way he looked very confident in the pocket, he didn't look frazzled at all. I thought he moved well. I thought he had good accuracy. I thought he did what he could have in this game with a horrible O line, losing your number one wide receiver in Chris Olave on the first on the first drive of the game. Alvin Kamara's playing hurt. Rashid Shaheed's kind of disappeared. Your defense gives up 44 points. I mean, Spencer Rattler did what he could to engineer a 20-point drive for the New Orleans Saints, or a 20-point offensive showing for the New Orleans Saints. So, I mean, he did what he could there. And since 2016, since Next Gen Stats started tracking passing yards outside the pocket, Spencer Rattler had 111 passing yards outside the pocket, which was the plan. They wanted to get him out on the bootlegs. They wanted to move him. He had a 16-yard scramble, which looked great. That is the most passing yards outside of the pocket by a Saints quarterback since the stats started getting tracked in 2016. So clearly what they were intending to do, Spencer Rattler did. He wasn't great. I thought he was good, everything considered. Bad O-line, horrible head coach, minimal offensive weapons. Number one weapon goes out, defense giving up 44 points. Show me a quarterback of any caliber in the NFL that can do something formidable with that. So now you ask the question of, do you start Spencer Rattler for the end of the year because Carr's probably out for another 3 to 4 games? Do you keep Spencer Rattler starter when Derek Carr comes back because you want to see what you have in the future? It's a double-edged sword. You say no because, mostly objectively, I'd say Derek Carr gives the Saints the best chance to win in terms of quarterback room and with the money you have committed to him. And we restructured him, so he's not freaking going anywhere. Spencer Rattler, on the other hand, wouldn't give you the best chance to win, but you would let him get his reps, like thankfully he is over these next 3-4 weeks. We know he's got at least 3 more games as the Saints quarterback. And, do you let him feast or famine? Do you let him be under the Dennis Allen minutia? Do you let Dennis Allen have any exposure to him? Or do you sit Spencer Rattler's ass on the bench and you let him learn from Derek Carr, which is okay. Derek Carr's never been the best decision maker, so I don't know if I want the future of my team, albeit he was a 5th-round pick, turn out to be that. You know what I'm saying? So it's a weird spot for the Saints right now. Again, I thought Spencer Rattler did good, all things considered. I'd be excited to have him as the quarterback of the future because if he put up 20 points with everything I just said, bad O-line, the coach, lack of weapons, your number one offense weapon gets hurt. Imagine what he's going to do with more time when the Saints don't have 4 centers in 4 weeks starting on their line. No kidding. When the Saints have depth in the offensive line and at wide receiver, someone to back up Kamara. We're running Kamara into the ground, it feels like. Imagine what Spencer Rattler would be able to do. But in the same breath, as long as Dennis Allen's there, I don't know if I want him to ruin potentially our best prospect of the future in Spencer Rattler. That was episode 76 of the NFL with AJL. I appreciate everybody tapping into the show tonight. Again, you could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here with me tapped in on the show. Appreciate y'all getting into the comments. As always, before we get out of here, y'all please make sure to like and share the stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit the bell so you never miss a post when we're on the platform. The QR code in the corner of the screen will give you every bit of social media and podcast content. As always, we're sponsored by Buy and Sell with AJL and PlayStation Online. Appreciate y'all again so much for jumping into the show. It feels good to be back after a little 2-week hiatus. I'm doing my best to get more consistent on this show. I got to start taking more time to leverage out the people that I know can help me, that can do the titling of the show, the thumbnail, scheduling the events, making the short form content to where I can just continue to be the best me here, stay consistent, focus my time on that because, a good bit of my time for the show is taken up with that. It's just me, myself, and I make all the titles. I make all the thumbnails. I cut all the clips. I research all the topics. I come up with all the topics. I bought all the equipment to build a studio, which is fine. I love what I've done, but I just want y'all to know kind of what's going on behind the scenes. I know we had a big coming out in February of last year when we relaunched the show, and now it's kind of been weird, but content's not going anywhere. I love doing the show. Bruns, I love you too, man. Thank you for tapping in. I'm sure you've been a pigging shit, for lack of better words, over this last month, hearing me snap on the Saints. But diehard's got to go through what diehard's got to go through. So, as always, I love y'all. I need y'all. I will see y'all in episode 77 on Friday, which is going to be pretty NFL